ghouls and ghouls, lock your doors and strap yourselves in. From Los Angeles, California, Bloody Disgusting presents the Boo Crew Podcast. Horror news, commentary, reviews, interviews, and more. With your hosts, Lauren and Trevor Shand and Leone D'Antonio.
Go ahead, scream. That's all we need.
Another victim crawls onto the gurney for a Boo Crew autopsy.
Joining the Boo Crew via the Speakeasy Studio are two of this generation's most exciting storytellers. Making her second appearance here on the show, from her start in short films to appearing in the Golden Globe-winning series Modern Family, CMT's Still the King, there's the Emmy-nominated Henry Danger, and so much more. Her choices in film roles has been exhilarating to watch. Tales of Halloween, Ghost Squad, taking us back to the 1960s, and Liza, Skies Are Gray, propelling us into the adventure of Jumanji, bringing the world of Goosebumps to life, then going off and making the exceptional indie post-apocalyptic adventure Riot Girls, establishing herself in horror iconography with Annabelle Comes Home, among others. Over this past year, she has had extraordinary roles in films as diverse as Blumhouse's Nocturne and Clouds for Disney Plus that have even further explored this wonderful depth of emotion she has total and complete command of. You can feel the joy she has in taking an audience with her. It's palpable and it's reflected in her fun choices and risks and the way she continually always is up for helping others and playing in the space, showing up in YouTube videos and Friend shorts still to this day. Also joining us, his feature debut was in Rob Reiner's award-winning Flipped, followed by Sofia Coppola's The Bling Ring. He showed up in TV series like the Golden Globe favorite Sons of Anarchy, Fear the Walking Dead, and more. Then came the pop culture phenomenon known as Netflix's To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and one of the best horror comedy adventures of all time, Happy Death Day and its sequel, our personal fave. He got to dive into an incredibly dark side with Chelsea Stardust's Into the Dark, All That We Destroy for Blumhouse, which was an even more delicious look at what he brings to a role that we just can't take our eyes off, using his relatability, warmth, and charm, and weaponizing it to pull us into fantastic stories. These two have teamed up to bring us a very unique new movie called Fear of Rain. It's about a teenager with schizophrenia who becomes convinced that her neighbor is keeping a dark, dark secret. At time of release in theaters on demand and digital February 12th, we are honored to be joined by the great Madison Iseman and Israel Broussard.
Yeah! Again, your intros blow my mind. They did last time, and that you made it even better. I don't know how.
Oh my God. Well, thank you very much, and well-deserved, you two. So congrats on Fear of Rain. What a journey this film is, and it's got an intoxicating mix of everything from mystery, thriller, horror. So when Madison last hung out with us, she had mentioned her gateway into the horror genre as a viewer were movies like The Grudge and The Ring. So Israel, what were the first horror films you remember seeing that really impacted you?
It was It for me. I saw it 2 days before Katrina, and then we took shelter in our elementary school, and of course the lights went out, and you had to use the bathroom in the school bathroom, which you can imagine a 12-year-old kid after just seeing that traumatizing movie. All I thought about was a clown popping out of one of the sinks or the drain on the floor, and in a pitch black dark fucking bathroom. I survived, obviously, but it stuck with me for a few years. And I'd say by the time I was 18, I got over the initial trauma of it. But I've enjoyed The Shining. I just recently saw Hereditary, finally. I've strayed away from horror films, believe it or not, because of my experience with It. But the more horror I do, the easier it is for me to watch and remind myself that it's just a movie and likely is not going to happen to me. So. Yeah.
How about you, Madison? What about you recently? What have you seen out there that's compelled you?
Right now, I'm currently filming the new I Know What You Did Last Summer for Amazon. So I've been doing a lot of research on that recently. I've been rewatching all those movies.
Oh, it's exciting. So, I mean, about that, can you tell us if it's based on is it the same storyline? Is it a whole new story?
I can't tell you absolutely anything. We are into secrecy. We are not allowed to share any secrets, but hopefully soon we'll be able to share some stuff. I hope so, at least. I'm really excited. It's really freaking cool here. I can't wait to tell everyone about it.
Oh, very cool. So I guess, Madison, as your career has gone on, what you've shown us is breathtaking in terms of your willingness to take chances and be vulnerable and get into these very compelling emotional spaces. Tell us a bit about the journey of crafting the character of Rain, as well as any sense of the gravity of responsibility maybe attached to the role of portraying someone with schizophrenia.
Yeah, I mean, it was extremely challenging, and to be honest, like, it was scary, you know. Castile is amazing, and she's kind of been our fearless leader, and just working with her and trying to figure out exactly, you know, what we wanted to do and where we wanted to take Rain, and what is schizophrenia, and just the research that went in behind it, and just everything we needed to do to create the most accurate portrayal that we possibly could, and to give justice to people who live with schizophrenia. So I read a bunch of books, watched a bunch of interviews, talked to lots of friends and family members, and that was kind of, you know, the most important thing for us, though, I think, throughout this entire filming process.
Gotcha. So, Israel, Fear of Rain gives you guys both so much fun things to chew on as performers. There's definitely an almost whimsical sleight of hand, much like Caleb's affinity for magic. Illusion is a very big part of how we see the world through Rain's eyes. What was interesting about that world for you to play in, and maybe the creative opportunities you saw in jumping into this project?
Well, I feel like most of the credit is due to Castile and Madison. You know, I loved the script when I first read it. I was on the edge of my seat, and you know, when you figure out that I might not be real, it you know, it starts getting a little more exhilarating. So I was really excited to hop on set and bring this character to life. And as far as like the magic, it's not magic, it's skill, it's sleight of hand. But it was fun jumping into an intellectual character, because I feel that's what where Caleb thrives. And you know, what I related to personally was he's a bit of a loner and an outsider, but he's also always trying to be understanding and supportive. So when he befriends Rain, I think that's where the love for the character began for me personally, because I like the way he was willing to set his own logic and his own ego aside, and kind of dive into this world that he didn't fully understand, but he was willing and more than happy to do it. And I enjoyed where the script eventually takes us, which, you know, I dive into a little deeper if it wouldn't give it away. But I thought it was a very interesting script, and I don't think it's been done before, in the sense of the kind of touchy subject that it revolves around, but also the way it's been portrayed in other movies. You know, people with mental illness usually portrayed as a villain, or you know, the instigator, the agitator, and it was nice and refreshing to take this take a subject that a lot of people stray away from because they're a little uncomfortable around it, and shed a new light on it, and take away some of the stereotypes and all the cliches around it, and kind of bring you a perspective of what it's like to be in the head of somebody with schizophrenia, and what's it like to be in a family environment where you're dealing with that. And I mean, it even taps into the social environment. So it has a lot of layers to this film, and I feel like Castillo did a great job, and Madison did a great job tying everything together, and it was a lot of fun unraveling everything.
What do you think draws Caleb to Rain? All that just said.
You know, I think it's I don't want to say love at first sight, but I think that had a lot to do with it. I think you know, he may have been in the classroom a day or two before she made it back to school. So I think she caught his eye pretty instantaneously. And after, you know, seeing that, you know, nobody was really talking to her, he maybe selfishly decided that was his one and only chance to befriend her, and in the awkward, quirky way that he did. But he was kind of fearless in the way he did it. He was a little pushy maybe, but I don't know. Look at Madison, what's not to like? So I think it was just two energies.
No fear of Rain.
Leo, you had a question for Madison.
Yeah, Madison, in preparing for your role, did you get to meet and talk with people dealing with schizophrenia, or did you research it on your own? And what surprised you the most about it?
Both actually. There's people in my personal life that, deal with psychosis on certain levels that I was able to talk with. Majority of my research came from, there's a memoir written by Ellen Sachs called The Center Cannot Hold. And it's her whole journey of her whole life. Basically, I think it starts when she's 4, maybe, or she's very young, and then kind of into her adulthood and navigating, becoming an adult and just entering the world. And just what that looked like. And it was one of the only resources I could find that really talked about what it was like growing up as a young woman and as a child with this psychosis. So Castile was the one who recommended it to me as well. So that was really like our guidance through this whole thing. It really just helped us navigate. It's one thing. Schizophrenia for everyone is also so different. So obviously Rain and what she goes through is not going to be what everyone else experiences, but it definitely helped as far as like in the mind of a young person, like what that was like for someone and just trying to grow up as well, because I think our film does such a great job talking about that. Obviously, Rain deals with her schizophrenia, but she also is an ordinary girl who goes to school and has a crush on a boy and then happens to witness her neighbor kidnapping a child, which is a huge deal. So it's definitely, our story revolves around Rain's schizophrenia, but there's so much more at play that comes to the storyline. But we did as much research as we possibly could. And we really wanted, the point of the film, we wanted to destigmatize schizophrenia, and mental health just needs to be talked about more and more every single day. And I think slowly we're getting there over time. We're seeing more and more films that are kind of shedding light on mental illness and what it actually is. So I'm happy to be a small part of this conversation and this movement towards that.
Developing Rain's traits, you see her incredibly anxious, biting her nails, being paranoid, hearing voices. What was it like to turn her off and on?
It's interesting because obviously I will never fully understand what it is like to be in the shoes of someone who lives with schizophrenia. All I can do is my research and then, put it into my work as much as possible. But more than anything, I think just the gravity and the weight of the script and the storyline in general, it's heavy, and a lot of the scenes are very heavy. So there's a lot of days where we really needed to lean on each other. And obviously, Izzy's so fantastic, and Harry and Katherine, like we all kind of just were a support system for each other, and we needed each other because it was heavy material. Lots of night shoots, lots of tiredness and crying, and it was exhausting, but I'm really proud of it.
Speaking of heavy material, there's that one scene where you're both in the car, and not only is it raining outside, but Rain herself starts to hear voices on the radio, and one of many tremendous dialogue moments between the two of you. How did that scene work in particular? There's the illusion that we were actually in the car with you too. How was that achieved?
We AD'd the whole thing.
Re-recording the entire vocal track there. But I feel like a lot of that credit has to go to Joshua Reese, our cinematographer, who literally killed any challenge that was put before him. He knocked it out. And with that car scene when it's raining, we had a whole rain machine. It was a whole shebang. And with Cass and Joshua, we tackled it. But that was actually one of the scenes I auditioned with, and that might be my favorite scene in the movie, when we're sitting in the car and I'm telling her about everything that's wrong with it.
Well, actually, fun fact too, it's one of my favorite scenes as well, and one of my favorite lines from the movie, so fun fact, this had a different working title before. It was never called Fear of Rain. And I would like to think that the new title was inspired by Izzy's amazing line. But it's like, that would be ironic. Rain afraid. Yeah, because it was never called Fear of Rain before, and then it just
Cass is writing there, so I mean, that's
yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome. Let's talk about Caleb's classic car. I mean, that thing is beautiful. What was your experience like driving that thing?
It was a land yacht, to say the least. But it was actually in the script. It's written that there's a hole in the floorboard, and I believe it was one of the members of the crew. Her name was Ashley. She was out looking for the car, and she was checking it out. She stepped inside of it, and originally didn't have a hole in the floor, which was, I think they were just going to write that out. But her foot went through the floorboard, so it ended up being perfect, and they got a discount on the car. So, it was great. I definitely love driving it. I love driving older vehicles when I get the chance. It doesn't happen too often. It was a little hard to maneuver at first, and on some of the scenes, you may or may not realize, but we're sweating like pigs. Both Madison and I, and Castile and Joshua in the back. They squeezed into really tight spaces on really hot days, and we drove around for an hour, and caught some great footage. So very happy and thankful that they were willing to make that sacrifice with us, rather than sitting in a tent.
Right. This film has such an amazing cold open, and Madison, you do a wild amount of stuff, including, getting buried alive within the first 3 minutes and dragged around. It's really intense. How much of that did you have to get into and down and dirty yourself?
That is an interesting story.
There's a lot of stories with that story.
Yeah.
It was a fun experience. We had a lot of fun stuff. I guess I can give the Sparks Note version of it. So all of that was so crazy because we were filming in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, we're in the woods, and it is 4 a.m. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, and we had an aggravated neighbor who did not like that I was screaming and thought something was actually wrong. So came over to check it out, and we told him we're filming a movie, everything is okay, it's fine. And then he was not very happy that we were filming a movie, so he went back to his property and shot his gun from his property.
What?
Oh my God.
Oh no.
It was very scary. So then the rest of the night, we filmed the rest of the scene silent. So all of those screams are also ADR'd because we were not allowed to make any more noise. It was a very interesting experience, but it's still you can't tell. It's very cool.
Yeah, you can't tell at all. My gosh, that's wild.
Pretty wild. It's a pretty good story. But it was a little scary when it happened. But that's movie magic.
Okay, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite scenes where you're in a painting. How was that achieved? I mean, it's so pretty.
That was one of my favorite parts of the script. I think when I read it, it was just so impressionistic, and I thought it's such a beautiful portrayal of what Rain actually feels, being trapped inside herself. But that was really cool. They brought an artist on set with us, and then I had a double, so I would basically film both sides. So she got painted first, and there was actually we had a frame in the tree, and she stood there and acted it, and then we switched and did the same thing on the other coverage. But I'm this isn't a spoiler, is it? I hope it's not. But it was just very cool, and it was beautiful. There's something else I was going to say about it, but then I got distracted because I thought I was giving away a spoiler.
They painted her, and then they painted, I think her name was Lindsay. Yeah, Lindsay. They painted Lindsay, and then they painted Madison. So there was a lot of work that went into that shot. And when I finally saw it, I was like,
it was very cool. They ended up doing some extra CGI to make it look extra, how it needs to be. But it was one that they were thinking about cutting because it was an extra. It was going to take a lot of time to film. And Castile and I, we both fought for it because we were like, no, this is Rain's brain. You got to keep it. It's so perfect. So we fought for that one, and it stayed, and I'm very happy.
Well, I feel like that one in the mirror really kind of gives you the best visual as to what Rain's going through, and taking that away, I feel like the movie wouldn't be the same. I don't know, it's exhilarating, and it puts you at the edge of your seat a little more.
Yeah, it really does. I was going to say, like, the mechanics of the way Castile brings us into Rain's world by way of seeing Rain's mantra, like literally handwritten, scrawled across the screen and crossed out. Is it possible? Yep. Could it exist? Is anyone else reacting? To playing with the sound, throwing voices and all the speakers around, like really takes advantage of all the different aspects of telling a story through cinema and makes us question absolutely everything we're seeing and creates that exhilarating, feeling. Could you get any sense of that world she was creating while you were on set, and versus like getting a chance to sit down and see it all in front of you, the finished product?
Absolutely. I mean, even just from the script, all of those little things that you see written, they were written in the script originally. So they were always part of the plan of what it was going to be. And obviously Rain, she's an unreliable narrator and she carries a story. So all of those aspects were kind of always in there from the beginning. And that was kind of the plan the whole time, was they wanted the audience to really feel a part of her, like where you really are confused. And it's funny too, because someone else also said to me, they're like, finally, like, at some point, like, I just didn't care anymore if things were real or not real. Like, I cared about Rain. And I'm like, that's good. I'm like, that's the point is Rain is taking you on this journey, and it's less about what is real and what's not, and just like finding someone to believe you and to trust you and taking people on that journey with you, versus like an outside perspective of someone looking at her and what she's going through. You really go on the journey with her.
Yeah, there's an incredible moment when, after the time when Caleb leaves and you go back to school that next day and you're just looking for help and you're trying to contact the doctor, and it's just like your heart just drops at that scene as a viewer, and you really are very much with Rain. So kudos to you for creating that. Yeah. Leo, you had another question you wanted to jump in with.
Yeah, working with the director Castile Landon, what was your favorite scene or sequence to shoot? Let's start with you, Israel.
I mean, the whole film was great, definitely, because just who she is as a person. She's really smart, really witty, and she knew what she wanted and how to communicate that. But personally, there's a bit of a montage of us going out and kind of being two teenagers, and we're at an ice cream shop or at an aquarium. That was probably my favorite day. It was scripted, but it wasn't necessarily scheduled. The aquarium, we kind of entered behind a back door. They knew we were there, but we didn't necessarily have all the permits, if that's okay to say. But everybody helped us out, and it was great. But we were actually filming guerrilla style with actual people. They weren't extras. They weren't hired. So that was a lot of fun. You kind of got to see how Castile works under that chaos, if you will, and it just flowed. And that was probably my favorite day working on set. And I mean, again, the whole time it was a lot of fun. There was always something new to each day, but that one was kind of wild, and nobody knew where we were going to go next. Nobody knew what was going to happen next. We just kind of walked around and shot a bunch of stuff, and we got it. I was happy with the outcome.
Madison, how about you?
Madison?
It's hard to pick, but there's one scene in particular with the mastermind, Harry Connick Jr., that is just, obviously I don't want to give anything away, but he's just so phenomenal. I loved working with him and watching him, and he's just incredible. So that, and you'll know that when you see it.
Oh yeah,
I know exactly the scene you're talking about.
It's a good one. Speaking of that, like, watching the movie again is an extraordinary experience. Like, I don't think I've seen a movie in a long time where watching it again is a completely different ride.
I have a question for you guys. Did you catch on to it?
No, not at all the first time. No.
Okay.
Not at all.
No.
But what was cool was all the signals that the movie showing us throughout the whole thing that you really noticed the second time, even in terms of little small wardrobe choices and interesting things on shirts, and you know what I mean? It's very, very cool. There's a lot to unpack.
That's so funny. Because that shirt was never really like it just happened. It was never super intentional until on the day, and we were like, this is intentional.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, so what about working with, I mean, we've talked about how awesome Harry Connick is. What about the great Katherine Heigl?
Yeah.
Like so talented. And it was such a learning experience for me. I feel lucky to get to work with these people who have just been in this business for so long, and they're icons. And it was just such a treat. It's so enjoyable to just like literally sit in a scene with them and like respond.
Did you guys keep anything from the production, like the neuron necklace, any paintings? Like, did you keep anything?
I got some paintings.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
It wasn't from set necessarily, but there was the Cafe Black Crow or something like that. I picked up some mugs from there. I have like 3 of them. That was definitely a staple of every day of filming. I should have kept the neuron necklace now that it's
right.
We actually kept something of yours, Israel, from Happy Death Day. I don't know if you recognize this thing. That's your toiletry bag and the Advil.
Oh my God. Jessica Roth would chug those things down. No problem at all. She just tossed them back.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of which, I mean, Happy Death Day obviously is a pair of movies that holds a dear place in our heart. Would you ever consider going back and do a third? Would that be something that you'd love to do?
Absolutely. I'm close with Fee, Jessica, and Chris, and it's really just the right time. It's the right platform. It's whether or not we want to dip into another movie or whether or not we want to dip into a little mini series. So it's really up to Universal and Chris Landon and Blumhouse, obviously, and I think a little bit of timing, but it's definitely being talked about. So I'd be down to hop into that universe again and see where it takes us.
Very cool.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah,
you have no idea.
Yes.
I think there's some things that need to be answered. I think there's still some questions out there, and obviously the second one leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger. If you watch past the credits, I believe it was past the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all excited to hop back into that world. It's just a matter of how and when. So.
All right, and then we could do maybe a whole freaky Happy Death Day crossover.
Yes.
Honestly, that's been circulating around too. Not with I've talked to Fee about it a little bit, but I've seen online people are definitely kind of itching for a crossover, and Chris is a genius, so I have a feeling he'd figure out how to do just that. And Catherine's great, Catherine Newton, she's great. And I don't know Vince Vaughn, but personally, I'd be more than happy to work with him. So I'm up and open for anything.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, the future is so freaking bright for the two of you. My God.
Yes.
You've done so much, and it still feels like you guys are just getting started. I mean, the world is yours. I cannot wait to see what happens, man.